Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving right into an incredibly tense, high-stakes situation, the massive U.S.-Iran maritime standoff that's unfolding in the Middle East right now. We're taking all the scattered reports, the expert analysis, and the raw data to show you not just the military maneuvers, but the massive economic ripple effects that are literally triggering across the globe as we speak. I want you to start by just asking yourself one question. What happens when the world's most critical oil choke point is completely shut down? You see, the Strait of Hormuz isn't just a waterway. It's the vital artery for global energy. And right now, we are looking at the very real, frankly catastrophic consequences of that artery being severed. To really understand the extreme stakes here, listen to this. Following the collapse of recent peace talks, U.S. President Donald Trump announced a total maritime blockade. His exact words were, "We're putting on a complete blockade. It's going to be all or nothing." Now, he justified this incredibly hardline stance by claiming that the U.S. actually has more oil than Russia and Saudi Arabia combined, thanks to what he calls drill baby drill policies. So essentially, the U.S. feels uniquely insulated from the immediate energy shock they're initiating. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap. First, the Hormuz blockade standoff. Second, failed diplomacy in Islamabad. Third, NATO and global pushback. Fourth, the looming oil shock. Fifth, Indonesia's pivot. And finally, the new geopolitical chessboard. We're going to unpack this geopolitical domino effect step by step. Section 1, the Hormuz blockade standoff. Mutual threats at the choke point. Let's look at the immediate, kinetic military actions happening right at the choke point between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. The facts on the ground are escalating incredibly fast. The U.S. announced a strict blockade targeting all Iranian economic ports going into effect on April 13, 2026 at 10 a.m. In response, Iran has labeled this an illegal war, releasing footage of their Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps literally repelling a U.S. destroyer. But what's truly fascinating here is Iran's legal argument. They're actually citing the 1958 General Convention on Territorial Waters to suspend innocent passage, claiming a state of war. And they are absolutely backing this up by readying cruise and ballistic missiles with ranges well over 1,000 kilometers. Section 2. Failed diplomacy in Islamabad. Why the talks collapsed. So, how did we get to the brink of open naval warfare so quickly? Well, these military threats are the volatile results of a spectacular diplomatic breakdown. Let's walk through this rapid timeline. The two sides actually entered a temporary ceasefire for 21 hours of incredibly tense negotiations in Islamabad, Pakistan. For a brief moment, peace seemed possible, but on day 2, talks entirely collapsed without an agreement. The fallout was just instantaneous. By day 3, the U.S. announced its full maritime blockade, and by day 4, Iran was openly threatening severe military retaliation. So what exactly went wrong in Islamabad? Well, observers and diplomatic sources report that the agreement was practically inches away from the finish line. However, the claim is that a crucial phone call from Israeli leadership to the U.S. fundamentally derailed the deal. The objections centered around Iran's stockpile of 400 kilograms of enriched uranium and the proposed release of billions in frozen Iranian assets. That's what stalled the final agreement. Section 3. NATO and global pushback. A divided international response. Now, you might expect traditional Western allies to march in lockstep here, right? Actually, no. There is a massive contrast. The U.S. and Israel are totally committed to enforcing this strict blockade to pressure Iran's economy. But a staggering 90% of the international community, including major NATO players like the UK, Germany, and Spain, have completely rejected participating. European nations are prioritizing open trade, and they're pretty bluntly pointing out that they simply lack the naval capabilities for a protracted missile war. Plus, they recall that U.S. and coalition forces previously struggled to secure the Red Sea against Houthi forces, who are a much smaller adversary than Iran. Section 4. The looming oil shock. The price of conflict. Now, what's really interesting about this number right here is that it shows how this isn't just some distant military dispute. This is about to hit your wallet hard. During the lead-up to the talks, oil had already jumped over $100 a barrel. But if Iran activates its allied networks to simultaneously close both the Strait of Hormuz and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait in the Red Sea, analysts warn we could see crude hit a truly staggering $150 a barrel. Think about what a $150 barrel of oil actually does. It creates a massive downstream shockwave. We are talking about surging fuel prices at the pump for everyday consumers. But it's not just gas. It's increased manufacturing costs for plastics, hydrocarbon derivatives, literally everything. We'd see severe disruptions to global supply chains and skyrocketing shipping insurance premiums. Ultimately, this transforms a blockade half a world away into an everyday financial burden, which severely risks political backlash in Western nations if everyday consumers are squeezed too hard. Section 5. Indonesia's pivot to Russia, navigating the fallout. And this brilliantly illustrates how non-Western nations are reacting. They aren't just sitting around waiting to see what happens. Countries like Indonesia are proactively scrambling to protect their energy security. President Prabowo is utilizing a highly pragmatic, completely non-ideological approach to ensure Indonesia survives this squeeze. First, Indonesia joins the BOP to signal cooperation with the US, but then, almost immediately after, Prabowo travels to Moscow to meet with Vladimir Putin to secure a vital 1 million barrels per day energy supply from Russia, all while simultaneously consulting with China to maintain geopolitical balance. It is pure survival pragmatism. Section 6. The new geopolitical chessboard. The broader strategic shift. Finally, let's zoom all the way out to examine the macro-level shifts in global power triggered by this standoff. By getting bogged down in the Middle East, U.S. military resources are stretching dangerously thin. There are even reports that the U.S. is pulling missile defense systems right out of South Korea to redirect them to the Middle East. And who benefits? China is absolutely capitalizing on this reduced U.S. Pacific presence to solidify its influence, especially regarding Taiwan. Russia gains incredibly vital diplomatic leverage and new energy partnerships. In the end, this conflict inadvertently drives the BRICS nations, specifically China, Russia, and Iran, to deepen their economic ties against Western sanctions. Which brings us to the ultimate provocative question we are left with. The missiles are ready, the ships are blocked, but fundamentally, this is an economic war of attrition. So who will break first? Will it be Iran's heavily sanctioned and isolated economy collapsing under the sheer pressure of the blockade? Or will the American public's tolerance for skyrocketing gas prices and inflation shatter first? It's a massive, high-stakes standoff, and the entire world is going to feel it. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope this helped you map out and understand these rapidly changing global events.